Oh, did we lose Leighton's visuals? Leighton, I'm gonna have to kick you off, Leighton. You're gonna have to come back on. Guys, Leighton's having some internet issues, so he'll be back on here right away. California, maybe it's a power outage down there. I don't know, Kelpie. Do you have that kind of problem where you are?
Occasionally. Been okay so far.
Well, I'm pretty lucky. I only live about, 15 miles from a power station. So I don't very often have to deal with power outages at all here. They get fixed pretty quick around here.
That's great. Yeah, usually ours come about because somebody was driving under the influence and hit a power pole. Happens more often than you'd think, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, for our audience, if you haven't heard of Kelpie Wilson, she's a fantastic lady that's written a book on biochar. And that's what we're going to be discussing today is about biochar. Yeah, there you go, the biochar handbook. And you guys can order that on her website. Let me just pull up that. And they can get it from Wilson Biochar, correct?
Well, you actually, it just send you a link to Amazon or Bookshop. You know, you can buy it online just about anywhere. So.
Okay, I'm going to check and see what's happened to Leighton here. Kelpie, why don't you introduce yourself for the people that don't know who you are?
Yeah, so I wrote this biochar handbook because I had so much in my head. I was teaching so many workshops about biochar. I've been doing it since 2007. I started off working for the International Biochar Initiative in 2008, shortly after I learned about it. And there was hardly even anybody that knew what it was. But I glommed onto it and said, this is cool. I like this. I'm growing my garden and I'm hauling manure every year to build up soil carbon. And this is like permanent compost, right? Mm-hmm. And it's true. My soil grows every year because I add biochar and it just doesn't break down and it gets rich black soil. Anyway, I learned all this stuff. I worked for the International Biochar Initiative. I met all the soil scientists who were pioneering the investigation into biochar. And so, you know, early on, I met all these people. I learned so much from them. And then I started to just teach workshops because I was doing my own experiments all the time, learning how to use it in my garden. And, you know, working for clients as a consultant, I became a biochar consultant pretty early on and, you know, could help the companies who are producing it find markets, you know, do that kind of market analysis for them. And then just teaching workshops. And I made these little like Xeroxed guidelines that I would hand out at workshops. Like, I think I have a book here. So I sent my little Xerox thing to Chelsea Green, which publishes amazing garden and farming books, as you all know. And I said, you want to publish my book? And they said, yes. So cool. That's the short story of me.
Well, I know we had biochar.org on out of California. They use your kilns, etc. And they were, you know, the brightness when they talked about you and what they've learned from you was amazing to see. Yeah. But I'll jump off. Leighton, are you good to go now, brother? Or is he froze up again?
Look, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
You're coming.
Right. I think I'm good. I just rebooted the computer to see if that was the glitch. So I think I'm good.
Okay, well, if you drop out, Leighton, I'll just jump back in. So, Kelpie, enjoy your conversation.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Leighton.
Well, hey, Kelpie, welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a while.
So, so what's new? Oh, no, I froze up again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just don't see you. You're moving kind of jerkily, but your voice is coming through.
All right, well, we'll just keep going. I think there's an internet issue out here today. It has been glitchy the last couple of days, so we'll just see how far we can get. And again, I may have to drop off due to my voice if it starts to get really like razor blades in my throat. I'll just let everybody know. You and Ken can finish up, but hopefully this voice thing gets resolved soon. So what have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Oh gosh. Well, published the book, of course. We've talked since then. My course, I don't know if my course was live. I don't think it was. So shortly after the book was published, I was contacted by Javin of Regenerative Living Online, and he has these amazing catalog of permaculture courses, and he invited me to teach a course, and I said, how can I say no to that? Right. So it's 8 sessions, and we offered it live January, February 2025, and we had like 80 people enrolled in it. It was tons of fun. It really was, because it's like an hour kind of lecture with me, and then a lot of time for questions, and we had some little exercises we did. Javin is a great educator. He understands how to put together the pedagogy part of it. And so, and now that was all recorded, and they do a wonderful job of breaking up the course into like little 5 to 15 minute sections. And so you can buy the course now as a self-paced course. And so you have access to all the videos, recordings, you have access to all the materials. I included tons of papers and guidelines, you know, things that never couldn't be included in my book. So there's a lot of extra materials. And so a lot of people have taken this now self-paced. And I'm just so happy to have that as a resource for the community, because most of the information on biochar is pretty technical stuff from academics. There's not you have that on one end, and on the other hand, you have a lot of YouTubers who think they know what they're talking about, and some of them do, but a lot of them don't.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we do this podcast, is try to move past the bro science and into information that's digestible. As you've made it clear, you know, a lot of the white papers, I mean, it took me years to figure out how to really read those papers and understand the sites and how valuable it is in most cases to go back and look at how that information was assembled, because that's usually what it happens in the white papers. So that's fantastic.
It is, and that's, you know, that's a lot of the way I get my information, is I do read those papers. And I have a science background. I have a degree in engineering, and so I know how to read scientific papers. I've authored a few of them, and you know, I know how to. You have to go beyond the abstract. You have to really look at the methods. You have to look at a lot with biochar papers. A lot they say we use biochar in this amount, but they don't tell you anything about the biochar they used, which, you know, early on this was a big problem. Now people are better about it.
Yeah, it's not all created equally.
No. Not at all.
Softwoods, hardwoods, you know, other types of ingredients, managing the flame, managing the oxygen.
Right.
So, yeah. So I didn't realize you had an engineering degree. Where'd you go to school?
Chico State.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. And that was in what aspect of engineering?
Mechanical engineering. I was really interested in thermodynamics and energy.
Okay.
So I wanted to work in renewable energy, but I graduated in the 80s. There was not much happening.
No, actually, there was a boom in the 70s, and then
that's what got me interested in it. Like, oh, solar power, you know, more fuel efficient cars, alcohol, whatever, you know, electric cars. And I studied it for 4 years, and then there's nothing. That was like 1987 was when I graduated, and Ronald Reagan had taken the solar panels down off the White House that Jimmy Carter had put up.
Yeah, that was just another game where they crashed all of the alternative energy stuff, because they realized if they tried to chokehold the American public from cheap gas, we would find other ways to supply our energy, and so they dropped the barrel price per barrel down to rock bottom, and all of those energies disappeared, all those alternatives. I mean,
things are pretty different now, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. I mean, I studied micro hydro generation, which was really cool. There was a lot of stuff out on, you know, DIY stuff, even like, you know, auger bits, and, you know, how not to disrupt the stream, there was like little paddle boats that you put out, and it would, they wouldn't generate a ton of them, but if you put them on a string, in tandem, you could actually, generate enough power to provide your a home, the electricity that you need. And there was just so many different, like popular science, popular mechanics. There's so much information on these alternatives back then. And then, like you said, come 88, couple things happened. I don't know if you remember Whitewater. That was the first banking scandal with Bill and Hillary, our beloved couple, who got caught red-handed scamming. And, I had a house at that point, and it went from being worth $147,000 on paper down to like $80,000 overnight. And that's when I really started to go, Art, how does that even happen? How is it that, we talk about, in the 70s, like these tram walls and passive solar and EVs, photovoltaics, all these different types of ways that you can, control your life to some degree. And then here we are, and something I've purchased is worth half what it was. My mortgage was underwater. I mean, how does that happen? And that's what really set me down a rabbit hole for the rest of my life. So I'm still down this hole. I'm still looking around what's going on.
Yeah, it's kind of cool down here in the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
So now, of course, we've got solar panels everywhere, and they're ripping up prairies and beautiful habitats to install these solar panels that they should be putting on the big box stores, right? Why are they putting them on the big box store roofs?
And the freaking infrastructure's right there at the big box store, and it's not out in these old growth forests.
And they're building all this solar electricity to run the data centers, to to control us, basically, to do surveillance on us, right? Or whatever they're going to do with it, AI, I don't know. Something we don't really need, in my opinion. And so what I've been thinking about lately, Leighton, is nitrogen. Where are we going to get it from for our farms? Especially, big ag needs all that nitrogen that comes from natural gas. And so, what can we do with all this electricity that we're installing? Can we make fertilizer with it?
Well, the answer is no, but you know who can? It's all about the biology, right? So there's a strain of corn that comes from the mountains in Mexico, and it's believed to be like the godfather of corn. Now, since then, there's other lower level godfathers, like the first yellow dent corn, which was the staple for the early farming revolution. They've just located some of the pure genetics that haven't been modified to the point where it is today. That brings a lot of hope. And the reason I say that is because those forms of corn actually have what's called aerial roots. And this is something I love to talk about. Ken's pulled up pictures for me before. And basically, there are these roots that are above the ground. And the ones in the Mexican plants are actually, 2 or 3 ears up on the stalk.
Really?
And that's why we call them aerial roots. And if you look at them, they're purple and red. They look a little bit kind of pornographic because just the nature of them. But what they do is they pull nitrogen out of the air. So you don't need a source of nitrogen.
So are there nitrogen fixing bacteria in there, in those?
Yep, just like in legumes, except for the legumes live underground.
Extrusions holding the bacteria up there.
Yeah, and they're coated with a slime. And that slime is, here you go. I mean, check these out.
Yeah.
And so they're coated with a slime that protect the bacteria from getting oxidized because they need to be in an anaerobic environment.
Right.
Oxygen. So that nature has adapted to these environmental and or what do we call it, evolutionary strategies to solve problems for continued evolution. And so there was talk at one point of cloning and breeding these plants, these corn plants, for the populace. And of course, guess what happened to that project, right? They don't want that. They don't want us having free nitrogen.
Yeah.
But since then, there has been a lot of progress in specific bacteria that can pull the nitrogen from the air, and they can operate in a more aerobic, maybe not fully aerobic, but suboxic environment, so that they are suitable for above ground, and they don't need to be protected in nodules. So I truly believe that if the dark forces of money would let go of their control, which I don't think they're going to, but I think we have the technologies present to be able to move into these more sustainable methods, or not sustainable, actually regenerative methods.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A good friend of mine, Kyle Moon, he started as a client, and I stopped charging him, I don't know, years ago, because he's just such a good guy. He's got such a big heart. We transitioned him off of nitrogen back when the Ukrainian war first hit. I talked to him for a couple years prior, and he was super nervous, like everybody. He's like, well, I won't qualify for farm insurance. If I don't have farm insurance, I can't borrow money for corn and diesel. I can't get to the end of the season. And I'm like, well, let's not go about this getting all crazy. Let's just, transition you in. As long as you're not completely stopping to use nitrogen, there's no, flare that's going to go off. There's no one's going to report you. Even if you purchase the nitrogen and sell it to a friend of yours, you're still on the books for having bought nitrogen.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, I convinced him to think a little bit more outside the box. You ever heard of Machiavelli?
I'm sorry?
You ever heard of Machiavelli? He was famous Italian guy that figured out how to read between the lines and rules and laws. So I said, hey, you don't have to read the book, but just search a little bit about Machiavelli, because he really kind of taught us about how to think outside the box and not just follow the rules. And so Ukraine
aren't paid to benefit us.
Right? It's these little tidbits that get through that are so valuable, especially in times like these, where the regulatory capture and bodies are just insane. It's like
much of the world's food is produced still by smallholders. It's a huge percentage. It's more than half.
Yeah, and to be honest with you,
mostly Asia and Africa, right, where people still live close to the land. But there's no reason why here in North America we can't be producing more food in our backyard, in our victory gardens.
Absolutely. But again, you've got to look at the bigger, 1,000-view picture of why we farm so much. And it's not for as much food as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's for ethanol.
It's
for corn syrup.
Yeah.
Other forms of sugar that are not beneficial to us. And again, that goes back to, all right, well, what's really going on here? But we won't go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole unless we can't stop ourselves. All right. But bottom line is that, he was able to transition off nitrogen and use fish hydrolysate as his source of nitrogen. Utilize biology. It took him 2 years to really crack the soil. And by that, I meant that after years and years of compounding, farming, tillage, chemicals, you create it's dead, right? We all agree it's a dead soil, but it's also dysfunctional as far as an engineering standpoint.
It's got a hard pan.
It's clay. Well, you have two things fighting. You have the hard pan below where your till goes to. That gets compacted, and when the water gets down to that, it goes anaerobic. So if the roots get down there, it affects the plant's ability to.
A lot of the nitrogen is down there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've been just reading a lot of forums, farmer forums, and like I was reading about green lightning, which is a way to use electricity to make nitric acid. And some farmers have bought these machines that do that, and then you're using that in mostly foliar, nitrogen. And there's a lot of opinions on it. Some people say this is a total scam. Other farmers say this is useful. And then there's a lot of commentary about it. And one person was saying, yeah, well, there's actually way more nitrogen in the soil that is sitting down there in that hard pan in the clay. That's where a lot of it goes. And if you could find a way to get that back up, maybe with biology, maybe using EM1 or something like that to get down there in that anaerobic area and start, pulling that, turning it into nitrogen that the plant roots could access. Well, there's all kinds of things we could try there.
Yeah, absolutely. The key is you got to break the cycle. So when the roots go down and they hit that anaerobic zone, it melts the tip of the root. So that root is now dead. It can't continue to mine. It can't continue to dig deeper to find other sources of water. I'm sorry about my dog. I may have to yell at him. Hang on 1 second.
Well, we do love puppies on the show, but we like quiet puppies more than barky puppies.
Just sit quietly in your lap. Oh dear.
Up, Cheeto. Anyway, so if we can get past that hard pan that's creating the anaerobic environments, which we know we can with biology. Now the soil's starting to function again. And then on top of that, we got to get rid of the crust, because when it rains, guess what happens to the water? It erodes. It doesn't penetrate. So it's a double edge or double whammy between the anaerobic pocket on the hard pan and the hard clay, crust on the surface. It's a nightmare. So
of course, biochar can help with both of those things. You can get the air down deep. It's hydrophilic. It'll help the rain penetrate more, absorb more. So
agreed, 100%. And the problem is that you're trying to tell a group of people who think that the only way to do this is nitrogen. And I feel bad for them because they've been conned. They've been lied to. And you're right, there's so much nitrogen in the soil. There's a dude out of was it Ohio or Michigan? Up there somewhere, who basically did a 15-year study and came back with exactly what you said. There's more nitrogen in the soil than we know what to do with. But it's not about nitrogen. It's about selling you more things, keeping you in a doom loop of debt and finance.
And it's that crop insurance that really is the enforcer, the crop insurance and the debt. It's like between those two things, there's no room to move.
No. And I'll be honest, it took Kyle 2 years of hard work to, modifying tractors, modifying pumps, modifying seeders, modifying, plows to get to a point where he could break the crust. Now, year 3, he's in season 4, but he can stick his hands down into the soil, and he doesn't have to till. He basically sets the disc at about 1 inch, so it just knocks the weeds back, which turns into fertilizer in the soil, ready to go for the planting, for the beans or the corn, whichever he's using. But it can be done, and he's off 100% nitrogen. Has been for this is his 4th season. So there are ways to do it, but you're right. The hard part is the crop insurance and the debt, because if they don't have enough money to buy the seeds, buy the diesel to get through the whole season, they can't even start because they don't have the money to purchase these things to get into the season. So you're spot on, honey. It's all about
and it's the whole nature of farming in this country has changed so much. So we were talking about the 80s. I had a friend in the 80s who grew up on a family farm in Iowa, and it was at the point where they had to sell the farm, but she taught me about what life was like there. They had animals, all kinds of animals. And she talked about how they love their animals. They had a chiropractor that would come and work on the horses, like they're part of the family. And so they had that manure. And real regenerative farming has to include animals, I think.
Absolutely.
And that, and again, here is not only do you have the nitrogen from the manure that the animals get from grazing, clover and legumes that are fixed, but nitrogen fixed from the air, free for you by the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Then you have this manure. But what I've spent a lot of time researching regarding biochar is how it works so beautifully to manage manure, because the way we currently manage manure, we lose most of the nitrogen. We lose it because it just volatilizes. It's so easily. But simply adding biochar and a natural acidifier like lactobacillus, and a little bit of a degradable carbon source like some molasses to keep that going, you can preserve so much, like 3 to 10 times of the more nitrogen in your manure than if you don't use biochar. And you just made a perfect slow release, high nitrogen fertilizer that's so available to the biology.
And let's not forget urine.
Urine is part of it.
Urine is urea. It
Yes.
really is. And again,
for home gardeners, you don't have to spend any money on fertilizer. You can just use your own urine.
Yep. Yeah. And dilution rate's insane. Like you can do large areas with just one single person source urea. Urine made from urea made from urine. And here again, it goes back to delivery, right? And biochar is by far one of the most superior ways to prevent volatilization and to store for the microbes when they want it. It's like giving them bank accounts.
Yeah. Now there's something to really consider though, that, ammonia, anhydrous ammonium is sort of a neutral pH, but once, it gets exposed to air and water now and alkalinity, then it becomes volatile. So it's really important to drop the pH a bit, because biochar with the ash in it is usually around pH 9. So I found that working with biochar, the most important thing you need to understand is pH, because it has such a big impact. So when I collect urine in my biochar urinal, I always use bokashi, because and it's really a great solution, because you could add, like for instance, in poultry houses, there's a lot of people that have tried to get biochar into poultry houses. It has so many benefits there, especially the big commercial CAFOs, right? Where the ammonia is just knock you dead if you walk in one of those poultry houses. So they usually use either sodium bisulfite or citric acid as an acidifier to knock the ammonia down. And that's all they use. They don't use anything to actually stabilize the ammonia and collect it. But if those are expensive and you have to reapply them because they get used up. But if you put biochar inoculated with EM1 or bokashi, now you have a culture that's continually generating acidity with the lactobacillus. So, that combination of lactobacillus and biochar is perfect for managing manure, because you get the acidity and then you get all the surface area of the biochar to absorb the nitrogen, and then the bacteria work on converting that to nitrate. And then you've got it's mostly nitrate in the char, and it holds on to the nitrate so it doesn't leach, because that's the other way we lose nitrogen. How much of our applied nitrogen ends up leaching into waterways?
A lot of it.
And creating dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico,
yep.
Right? So, or the local lakes and ponds. They get full of algae, blah, blah, blah. It's like we're creating so many problems that we could solve if we manage things right from the beginning.
Well, that goes back to education and tools. And so that's why it's so important that you and others in the industry continue to educate, teach, and give people ways to do this, DIY. Another really interesting thing is, we grew up with not porta potties, outhouses. And the one thing that you always did after you got done doing your business was you took a scoop of lime, you threw it in there, and that prevented the volatilization, the odor, and everything else. And then eventually, after a couple of years, you move that outhouse to a new location, and by God, the forest came back like crazy where it was, just blew up, like out of control, right? And so it's funny that we're talking about these things, because I'm working with a farm down here who's got a lot of chickens. Well, they got a lot of animals. I mean, it's like, I don't want to call it Disney World. It's not like that. It's more like a very exotic petting zoo. They got camels. They got people.
Oh, wow. Zoodoo.
Beautiful big old tortoises. These things must be 150 years old. They're monstrous. Anyway, he has an exotic chicken collection. I think there's probably 15, if not more, varietals of chickens. And they all got these crazy different colored feathers and stuff. And they have an odor problem. And so the person that brought me in to consult with her, to dealing with the orchards that were actually just declined to almost nothing. They weren't producing fruit, weren't producing flowers. So she brought me to the chicken coop, and it was like, we were talking about nitrogen fixation and stuff like that. She's like, look at all of the sources of nitrogen I have right here on this farm, if I could figure out how to use them. And one thing I said, I go, well, if you take freshly ground organic matter, we call it GOM, it has to be fresh, and you spread that, 12 inches, 6, 10, 12 inches, whatever you can do on the floor of the cages, that will eliminate the odor and suck up the nitrogen, just like biochar. And it's so cheap. I mean, these local facilities give it away because they can't get rid of it fast enough. And if these are like my long-term dreams. If the world doesn't end on 2030, that we start getting groups together, like biochar production, composters. Because the other thing about biochar too, you throw it on top of your compost pile, and you prevent the volatilization of the nitrogen that's coming out. You slow down migration when you're watering. So it's just a win-win. The problem is, when it comes time to actually, because I have to purchase it, I'm not allowed to make it. I tried. I begged Rob to go for what's called a exploratory permit or special permit to making biochar. And he's like, Leighton, we had one. We had one for years, but the state took it away from us because they're worried we're going to set the place on fire. Even though we have water trucks, we got big cisterns all over the place, dedicated tanks for just fire department.
To make biochar in California using my Ring of Fire kiln. And we've had a lot.
This is a commercial composting facility.
Okay.
So it's a different set of rules and regulations.
But you could make it, next door to that property. You could make it at your house.
I can't in this neighborhood. People would freak. I could spit and hit 3, 4 houses, right?
Right.
And then where he is, it's all ag land. So you'd have to try to convince somebody that owns the ag land, that leases it, to let you make it. But everyone's so scared of fire out here that it's like,
Well, I've got lots of people using Ring of Fire kilns in California. Lots of them. You talk to the Biochar Coalition guys, and we've been through a lot of different jurisdictions with permitting. And anywhere, usually we just try to go under regular agricultural burning laws, because as much as they would like to outlaw agricultural burning, you've got an orchard and you're removing dead trees and trimmings. People burn it. It's the only economical way to deal with it. So it's not illegal yet. And of course, in the forested areas where they're doing all the thinning, they have to dispose of it with burn piles. They can't chip at all. And so we've had really good luck with most air districts in California being able to permit ring of fire kilns. So, you know, maybe not that too far away you'd be able to do it.
Well, I mean, it's definitely something to look into because I have endless biomass. But the problem is moving the biomass to this location, moving the biochar back to where the biomass came from. Now you're getting into hauling, loading.
Yeah.
So it's got to be made where you want to use it. And Rob had the ultimate system. He had a gasification system that collected the wood vinegar.
Oh.
So he had everything there, and then they friggin' yanked his permit.
Wow.
So, you know, again, it's like the politics
Mm-hmm.
in these, well, they're like enclaves because they're not, it's, you know, Moore Park is a enclave of Ventura County, but Ventura County is, I don't want to say corrupt, but polluted, absolutely polluted.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy, contradiction. They don't want you to be able to do anything. All they want to do is tax you and steal the money. That's the goal. Now, if you get north of here, you get into Santa Barbara, then you start to get, you know, a little bit more freedom and up into, you know, San Obispo. I never can pronounce that. You're getting away from the real political districts. I mean, LA is only 45 minutes with no traffic.
Right.
I literally got from here to LAX during COVID in 45 minutes, never touched my brakes once, set the friggin' cruise control for 79 and went. And I mean, but that shows you how close I am to the
I hear you. We have been able to use biochar kilns in some municipalities. So Nevada City, up in the Sierra foothills, they approved using the ring of fire kiln in the city limits. You know, because they're under threat from fire. So the fire departments love it because, you know, if you don't know what the ring of fire kiln is, it's a 7.5-foot diameter metal ring that's in 4-foot panels that you.
Thanks, Ken.
There it is. And so you just build your fire inside of it, and then you keep loading it. You keep adding material to it. And since all the air comes from the top, you don't get sparks flying out. So it's very safe. So we always try to, in a new area, invite the fire department to come out and see what we're doing. And they're like, oh, thank you. We love this because we're always chasing people's burn piles that got away. Here you're protected from the wind. You know, and it's just so much better. Plus, you have the hose right there because you want to save the biochar and you need to put it out with water and you're paying attention. So they're just so grateful when they see that. So the city, Nevada City said, yeah, let's use these. This makes a lot of sense. So in the fire prone areas, you have a lot easier time, you know, in the forested fire prone areas of getting these permitting. And then I have a really cool example in Salt Lake City. There was an HOA that had, and you know, our friend who was a forestry contractor, you know, had the job of removing all this brush and stuff. And normally they would bring in a chipper, and they were having a block party, and they're like, we don't really want the chipper, bring the biochar kiln. And you know how noisy chippers are. So it's an HOA. And they said, yes, we want the biochar kiln. They had their party. Nobody knew anything was happening. There was no noise. There's no smoke. I mean, you get a little puff of smoke every now and then, but there's barely any smoke. So, you know, as we get more examples like this, you know, hopefully we will convince more of these authorities that, you know, this is going to save us money because our fire departments are going to be a lot happier.
Hell yeah. And that, you know, that's the key to the whole thing. And we were talking about pH earlier, and the secret to the whole maintaining of the lower pH is just prevent that ash, right? Just keep it more char and less ash, and you're not dealing with the pH spikes. And again, I believe I was told that pH can be regulated through feedstock as well. Is that true?
It's really more about temperature than anything.
Okay.
What I found as far as feedstocks and biochar, um, bulk density makes more of a difference in how the process goes. It's sometimes, there's a lot of variety, but there's a balance between moisture and volatile content, and the water content. It all makes a difference in how it goes. So the wetter it is, the less ash you're going to get, but also, well, actually, no, it's the other way around. Sorry about that. The wetter it is, the more you end up having to burn material to ash to get the heat. But basically, we're making it in a flame, so it's all high temperature biochar. So it's always going to be somewhere around pH 9. But the more ash you have, you could get up to pH 11, which would be really bad. pH 9 is really doable. To make a more pH neutral biochar, you make it at a much lower temperature. So you would make it in a retort.
Okay.
And it would still have some of the oily stuff in it. It's more like fuel charcoal. And so that can be good for soil, but it has some other problems too. You can get nitrogen tie up from that. And so I'm always using the higher temperature biochar because it's more of a pure carbon. But there's so many ways to mitigate the pH.
Yep.
EM1 is the perfect example. Wood vinegar is another example. So it's really not a big problem. Even just composting it. I have this great little experiment. And one of the things I love about working with biochar is it's so easy to do these experiments for yourself and learn. And so I did this great experiment with pure chicken manure from an egg laying operation, a local one, where they use no bedding. It's just the birds are in the coop and they're just pooping and they scrape it out. And we went and collected it for our garden, and it's the nastiest stuff you can imagine. It is slimy. It is pure poop. And I made 3 piles, one with just the poop, one with 25% biochar added, and one with 50% biochar added. That's a lot of biochar, but it was pure nitrogen, right? So you could add that much. And what I found was within 6 weeks, the biochar piles were like soil. They completely turned to soil. The plain, the plain manure pile was dried up poop, basically. And then I tested the pH, and the pH of the one with 50% biochar was lower than the one with 25% biochar, which was lower than the pure poop. So the poop was about 8.5. The biochar was about 9.5. And the composted biochar and chicken poo was about 8.
Interesting.
So what happens is microbes, the biology comes in. They love the biochar, it gives them air and water and habitat, surfaces, electrons. They like electrons. Mm-hmm. And they start eating the poop, and then they're excreting organic acids. So they're acidifying the material. So a lot of times all you really need to do with biochar is compost it with a nitrogen source, and you're going to get a close to neutral pH.
So what do you attribute the destructive force that broke that carbon down so quickly and turned it into more of a soil type? My understanding is biochar lasts a long time.
No, the biochar isn't broken down, but the poop is broken down, and the combination of the poop and the biochar, it's like beautiful soil.
So you could still feel the biochar. You could still.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I didn't mean it was like literally,
That's what I was like. Wow, that's crazy.
No. It was like the soil of my garden. Okay, it's like probably 10% biochar, so it was like my soil of my garden. And it had a nice earthy smell. It didn't smell like poop. It was, you could plant in it. It was completely composted. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and then it's not going to burn the plant because there's the nitrogen stuck in the carbon source, so that microbes can pull it as they want it.
Right.
You call that a buffet. That's really what I like to refer to long-term storage. Especially with biochar, it's a wonderful way to create a buffet that lasts for years.
Yeah, and so with the nitrogen crisis we have now, with the Straits of Hormuz closed and we can't get the urea and the ammonium, well, we can, but it's a wake-up call, right? It's a wake-up call. Hopefully we're not going to see famine, but eventually we need to transition away from fossil fuel based nitrogen in food. We're eating fossil fuels right now, and we know there's a better way. There's the biology, there's also biochar for stabilizing these natural sources of nitrogen from manure and for creating slow release fertilizers, like you say, the banquet. So, one of the strategies for conserving nitrogen in farm country is targeted applications, right? So you don't put it in all at once and let it volatilize and leach away. You put in some at planting, you put in some at a later stage when it really needs it. And so you can conserve your nitrogen that way, and that's smart, except that's another pass with a tractor. And we have a diesel shortage. So to me, it makes more sense to really look at how we can make slow release fertilizers. And biochar is totally key for that.
Yeah, I think the big key is to get industry to adopt it, right? Because right now, the industry still, wants to sell. But when they realize they don't have anything to sell, then you, the group of us who are regeneratively focused, go to them, hey, we have something that's an alternative that's going to work better. So it's more beneficial for the environment. All we need to do is take 3 dump truck loads of biochar, dump them in those cow lagoons, give it a couple weeks, and then, pull the friggin' biochar out, put it in bags, super sacks, and ship it to you. There's your alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the key, is you got to convince the decision makers that, and they'll come to their knees eventually. Will have no choice. If they can't sell anything, they can't pay their employees, they can't pay their sales staff. They're going to get to a point where they're like, well, I either have to figure out another way or get out of business and retire. And so, but all of those things get, push comes to shove now. It started during Ukraine when people were like, oh my God, the price of urea. You've seen it now. It's insane how expensive it is. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't include, like a good friend of mine did a study on what it takes to process, how many gallons of natural gas does it take to produce, a 50-pound bag of urea? Mm-hmm. Something outrageous, like 100 metric tons or something. It's not tons, it's a cubic feet, or I forget the exact conversion. Mm-hmm. But he also had to take into consideration that you have to take the natural gas, you have to get it to the plant. The plant manufactures the urea. Then you have to take the urea, package it, handle it, put it on trucks, get it to the port, get it overseas, get it offloaded, get it to the farm, and then apply it. And when you take all of that into consideration, the energy that went into it is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Does not make any financial sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's the system.
And it's all based on cheap oil and gas, and that's over now. I don't see prices going down.
I think that the present political system, which is going through tumultuous times, to say the least, but if all goes well, I tend to think that we'll see a drop down to pre-COVID levels. But how long that will sustain, I don't know, because it depends on who comes in next.
It'll drop if there's demand destruction. If the price gets so high that people can't afford it, they stop driving as much, they stop flying as much, then the price will come down. But depletion is reality. Peak oil is a reality. So it'll go up and down, but it's never going to be super cheap the way it was when we developed all this stuff. That's my opinion.
And again, there's forces at hand here that govern a lot of this stuff, supply and demand, right? Like you said. But if it's just supply, then the price comes down. If it's just demand, prices usually go up because that's how they make their money. But
either way, it is kind of a wake-up call. Don't you agree that we need to be less dependent, whether it's supply chain disruptions or depletion or just, all the pollution and other problems and inefficient use. It's time to come to grips with this problem.
Agreed. And let's face it, there's more and more people every year, right? So there's going to be more and more demand. Like I saw, it was an article about what happens to humanity in another 100 years. Like we've had 300 years of prosperity to the point where we've expanded to every point on the globe. There's very few places that man has not impacted, whether it's through mining, through logging, resource harvesting. So on this continued trajectory, which is like this, it gets to a point where it doesn't work anymore. The numbers don't add up. That we don't have the resources. Water gets polluted, air is polluted. Everything the environment is no longer functioning, and that's to me where the rubber really hits the road as far as all these things. Until that happens, money will get manipulated. Political regimes will come in and go, and let's face it. I mean, the only way humanity learns that you put someone in ultimate power, they're ultimately going to crush you because they're not going to give up the power without taking you down. They don't care. It's not about you. It's about them. This is where I wish that there was a way to get the world stoned on LSD, right? And bring the love out of you. So the point where it's not all about you anymore. It's not about narcissism and control and money and power. The miracle of rewiring the brain. It's fact. It's truth. But the problem is that how do you nuke the planet with LSD without causing a little bit of a problem?
Yeah, there's a few different ways to look at that. Religion can be helpful too, but yeah. But I think also just if everybody understood what they could do for themselves, because it's got to start with each individual, in our hearts, and then just take some steps. So I want to tell a story about how I got salad for myself this winter.
Sure.
So normally I go buy those plastic I grow lettuce all summer, but normally I go buy those plastic boxes in the winter of salad greens. They're nice. So I have a few of those, and it turns out those are the perfect size for a pot to put in my little tiny greenhouse to grow something like lettuce, because it's deeper than a flat, right? You can have room for some roots. So I took a couple of those and I put some biochar in the bottom, and then put some potting soil with biochar and compost. And I sowed some lettuce seeds, and back in December, by the end of January, I had lettuce. I had a couple full things of lettuce, made quite a few salads out of it. But what I did is I clipped it. I didn't pull it out. So the roots are still there. Put it back in the greenhouse, watered it. A month later, I had another couple of salads. And then, because it resprouts. And then I clipped it again. And a month later, I had a third bunch of salad. So that's very little effort, right? But you have some nice soil in a somewhat, place like a greenhouse or a window where you can get some sun. And I could grow my salad for the winter, and then I don't have to spend the gas to go to the store, buy another thing that took a lot of energy to make, and who knows how they produced it. I grew it myself. It's organic, it's fresh, it's got vitamins. And, we can do some little things like that for ourselves And then we start feeling empowered. You take one step, you feel empowered, and then, well, maybe you'll go and start a garden this year and grow more of your food. And even if you're not going to grow all your food, but if you can grow all your own fresh vegetables, you could improve your health. Then you're less dependent on the medical system. So it's like step by step pulling yourself away from these systems, because we do have the power to do a lot.
I wish people were more motivated. And I think that's probably, like this is one of the biggest demotivators on the planet.
Yes.
And you're right, because I know people that have a whole microgreen business, in a friggin' cold warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's barely warm enough. I mean, it's comfortable. It's not,
Right.
hot. It's just warm. And he runs a whole microgreen business with these, those old aluminum racks that you get from the food companies, the food production. They have the trays and the slots. And he took those and he put T5s, which are a little fluorescent grow light, low energy, and just put one T5 in the center of each one of those trays. And he has, maybe 12 inches or whatever for the growth. And he does the same thing. He has those little plastic caps that go over the top to keep the humidity right. And he's got a whole business running year round and makes a great living. He sells it to the farmer's market. He sells it to other farmers that go to other farmer markets.
Nice.
And so, there's ways to do this. But again, you gotta be motivated. You gotta be dedicated. Again, this is a life form. You can't just forget about it and not water it and take care of it.
Well, so much has to change, including, how we live, how we organize our living situations in our families. Right now, everybody works, right? You have a family, mom and dad are both working. It used to be one person, mom, stayed home and was the homemaker. And she could do things like have a kitchen garden, cook from scratch, much healthier food. Now everybody's too busy, with their jobs, and they're exhausted when they get home. They can't make dinner, so they get takeout or frozen food. It's the whole thing. So you kind of have to change everything.
Agreed. I mean, I grew up with my mom home, my dad worked.
Yeah.
2 cars, summer vacations, beautiful home.
Yeah.
All fresh foods. We had basically a farmer's market that was year round, or not year round, but it was 9 months out of the year. It was a farm stand, and they had meats, they had eggs, they had other things. It wasn't just fruits and vegetables. But my God, we'd go up there with my mom, if we were, on a day off or whatever, a school holiday, we'd get to go there with my mother. And I could remember the people were so nice, and they'd be like, oh yeah, if you want to snack on the grapes or, the berries, whatever, go for it.
Nice.
But you don't get that anymore. It's like everybody's so struggling to keep alive that they don't make enough money to be able to be charitable, right? And I don't know how to fix that other than take the money away from the system that owns it or that manipulates it. That ain't gonna happen unless we nuke them on LSD.
I wonder if you could put it in the lettuce.
Have to go with a water source, definitely. Come up with a really creative elitist type water like Fiji, and then target it with whoever's buying it, so they're getting a case of this water. Send it directly to the Federal Reserve. Anyway, we're way off the subject of biochar here, but I think the wholesomeness of the conversation is what really.
Yeah, and the thing about biochar that really hooked me at the beginning was I was always struggling to learn how to garden, and it's so hard. You make so many mistakes, especially when you're starting out. And biochar just made it a lot easier. So it made the composting easier. I think this is a big stumbling block for people who try to garden, is you hear about compost, but you don't really understand it. You think you need to get one of those backyard tumblers, which really just oxidize your stuff. They don't really make good compost. Yeah. And so it's like, well, how do I do this and make good compost? And it's like, it's smelly. What can I put in it? How do I mix the browns and it's very hard to understand. And so what I found is biochar just made that a lot easier, and especially for the food waste from the kitchen. So I have a whole system that I use that it just makes the best compost. And if you get the biochar handbook, it's all in there, all my recipes. And so what I do is I start with bokashi and with biochar in a bucket. So every day my food scraps from the kitchen go into that bucket and they're fermented. So I'm pickling it, and that stabilizes the nutrients. And when that bucket is full, it doesn't have that horrible garbage pail smell. I mean, it has a little odor, but it's not horrible because it's pickled with the bokashi, and the biochar is absorbing all the liquids and, promoting the whole fermentation process. And then I have my little pile out in the backyard. And again, people, okay, composting, I've got to build bins. I'm going to have to turn it. I've got to have all this, wire bins or wooden slats, this whole system. I don't do any of that. I build a pile in layers with the biochar, the garden weeds, the grass, the leaves, whatever. And then, I'll build it till it's pretty big, and then I'll turn it once just to get the outside stuff on the inside. And then I'll just leave it for 4 or 5 months, and it's done. No turning. I'll cover it with a tarp so it doesn't dry out, and I'll water it in the hot summer a little bit. But there's no turning. There's no fancy bin. It's just a pile with a tarp over it, and it finishes in half or less of the time. It composts so quickly, and it's full of worms. And then, I make about a cubic yard out of each pile. So I make about 2 yards of compost, really high quality. I sent it to Ward Labs for a microbial analysis, and they do that PFLA, the phospholipid, whatever cell wall thing. So they can tell not the exact species, but the functionality. So you've got your different kinds of bacteria, and then you've got your protozoa and your predators. And if you have and your fungi, and if you have the full spectrum of biological diversity, that's what you want. So and my compost, when it was tested, was excellent on every standard. And so, I see a lot of composting systems out there that claim to be, so amazing for biological diversity. But really, if you have the biochar and you have the bokashi pre-compost, you don't need to, it happens fast. It's the best compost in the world, and it's easiest. So to me, that was key. For me to be a gardener was to learn how to actually make compost without investing in all these structures and, turning and just all the confusion about it.
So I went down that rabbit hole early on in my life, and the trick I used was I'd drag an old punk log out of the woods. Hugo culture, right?
Yeah.
Same concept. So I'd take that punky old log and I'd hose it down with water, or in some cases compost extract, and then I'd build. I'd cut radial wood branches from the local trees with the leaves still on it, and I'd make a teepee. Then I'd sprinkle hay on top of that so nothing went through, and then I'd start building my compost pile on top of that.
Oh, neat.
I'd water it and add some extracts as I was building it, and once I was done, I would literally cover crop it. And what I would do is literally take little seedlings out of the woods that I'd collect, and little plants, flowers, grasses. I'd go to the side of the road and pull grasses, because those grasses had to be so tough to live in.
Right.
All the roads, saw people driving over them. They had to be the strongest plants. And oh my God, just like you said, 6 months later, this stuff was incredible. I mean, just dynamite, loaded with biology.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, it's a no turn. The cover crop puts roots in the soil. The underneath acts like a chimney, so it pulls cold air in as it heats up, and the heat migrates up through the top, so you don't have to worry about going thermophilic. It just stays mesophilic. Yeah. And 6 months, it's rocket fuel. Now, I didn't use food waste, but I think, there's another alternative. If you don't make a lot of food waste, I have no food waste. I literally have no food.
on. You don't have the butt end of a carrot and an onion skin and a.
Well, all right. I'm a single guy. I eat one meal a day, so I just don't produce enough. Like I don't have a family to really take the time to compost it.
Gotcha.
And to be honest with you, like the butt of a carrot, I'll give it to the boys. They love those things. I don't use a lot of onions. I don't use a lot of garlic. I'm kind of like a meat and potatoes guy, so there's never any meat left. Well, if there is,
what do you do with your bones?
Say again.
What do you do with the bones?
Oh, what do I do with the bones? I bring them up to peach hill soils, and I either grind them or I tumble them in a gizzard and make a bone meal. So
you can make bone char. That's what I do.
Yeah, but again, I can't freaking make biochar up there unless I do it illegally. You know, I don't want to get thrown off that property. I'm so blessed that Rob allowed me. You know, he basically gave me an acre and a half and said, "Do whatever you want up there."
Nice. You can make a little bit in just a fire ring. So
like I could probably get a grill, an old grill from
make it in a kettle grill. An old kettle grill.
Exactly.
The vent on the bottom because you don't want air flowing through it.
Right.
Get a bunch of kindling and stack up the kindling, light it on top till it burns down into charcoal. And if you can add a little more after that burns down, and you can fill that up with.
Not quite that big, Ken.
No, but that's what it would look like in a kettle grill.
Yep.
So we've done that. So you can make small amounts. And you can use it just in a regular. You could just get a little fire ring, like you find at campgrounds.
Yeah, or those fire pits. Just take the lid off one of those, flip it upside down, and it would be the same, essentially the same.
So I mean, anybody can make biochar in their backyard, really, pretty much. If you have it in your backyard,
as long as your neighbors don't hate you.
They won't, because you're not going to be making smoke. It'll be less smoky than a barbecue.
This is true. And listen, just to say this, my throat is definitely getting scratchy, and you got 7 questions, and I want to make sure you get through all of the questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it, Ken.
Oh, sure. I'm trying to take a break, and you want me to work?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to start. How long does it take biochar to charge if you put it in a 5-gallon bucket, add water, and then steep a hose stocking with a cup of compost in it without a bubbler?
So that's like basically making a compost extract or manure tea. So I would just fill the bucket with biochar and just mix the compost right in it and add a little water. If you can collect some of your own urine, that's a good thing too. Usually, I don't usually combine biochar with finished compost. I put it in at the beginning, let it go through the whole process. If I want to make biochar just to use as a fertilizer now, I will make one of my biochar urinals and fill that up with urine, and that makes a really good fertilizer. So, but you can add compost to it as well, or make a compost extract and dump it in there. And I usually, for that kind of thing, I give it about a week to actually kind of move in. But yeah, there's so many different ways to do it. Anything you do will probably be good.
Well, and her next one was, if she uses worm castings, is it the same kind of time span?
Again, normally I would just mix the worm castings or the compost right in with the biochar and moisten it, and actually not even put it in a bucket. I would make what I call cultured biochar. So that is, you take your biochar, you mix it with the organic ingredient, worm castings or anything like that, moisten it, and then cover it, with a tarp and let it sit for about a week, and you'll start seeing the white filamentous bacteria, what are they called?
Actinobacteria.
Actinobacteria, yeah. You'll usually start seeing that. So it's cultured biochar. So there's two ways to kind of charge biochar that I use a lot. One is biochar compost, where I put about 10% biochar into the compost ingredients and have it go through the whole process. And then so that's, biochar in compost. And then there's cultured biochar, where it's mostly all biochar, but you add a certain amount of bokashi, worm castings, compost, fish hydrolysate, any kind of fertilizer, food like that, and moisten it and cover it and wait a week. And then, you start getting all the microbes moving into the biochar.
I agree 100%, but I would not use a bucket like Kelpie said. The bucket can go anaerobic at the bottom, and you do not.
Yeah, yeah.
You want it in touch with the earth, because the earth is where all these organisms are going to come from. And if you let it sit there long enough, you're going to get worms, like within months.
I've had worms crawl into a pile of pure biochar. I'm like, what are you guys after?
The bacteria.
Yeah, I guess. It was just came out of the kiln, wasn't mixed with anything. And they crawled right in the kiln, actually. Like maybe they're after the electrons,
That's a good question. That's a good question. Now, the kettle was not hot, right?
No, it was, I have this, it's called the Oregon kiln. It's like a pyramid kind of bin. I have a couple sizes of them, and it has, I usually, fill it, it makes about a cubic yard of biochar. It's 5 feet across. The free plans are on my website. If you want to make one, you can download those for free. Anyway, so it's full of biochar. I flood quench it, and then it has a drain hole. So I took the plug off the drain hole and drained it. Been there for probably a couple months, because I make it and then I don't really use it till the spring. And I went to empty it, and the worms had crawled in through the drain hole. There was like half a dozen worms in the bottom of this steel bin with biochar and ash and water. Like, what are you guys doing there?
They could be collecting the potassium. I mean, they're eating the bacteria, so there's got to be a lot of bacteria on those
or something.
Yeah.
But,
or the biochar maybe for their grist, for grinding up the food.
Yeah, I always when I've had worm bins, I always use biochar, and if it's moist, they like it, because worm bins can get acidic, and so a little moist biochar can really help a worm bin.
Well, and that was actually one of Serena's other questions. I wonder if I put biochar in the worm bin, would it get charged?
Absolutely. And here, mix it in with the food waste. If you're using kitchen waste in your worm bin or manure or whatever, mix it in with that, and then make sure it's moist, and then put it in the worm bin, and your worm castings will be amazing.
Cool. How about if somebody's doing, like I know Andy Lopez, what he does is he runs a certain amount of water through his worm bin to get the exudate, and he uses that in his business. Would that boost the quality of his exudates?
It would create aeration, which is important, because more he waters, the more the bottom layers get compacted. So his extract would be better as a result of providing that aeration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably true. I've been making compost extracts lately, and that's really interesting. I watered all my starts with them this spring, and they look really nice and strong. So I made some from a few different compost piles. They're actually horse manure and biochar, and one didn't have any biochar. And then I looked at them under the microscope, and they looked about the same, got to say. So,
okay.
But
next question from Farmer Cheryl. Instead of incineration and landfill of municipal waste that is used to produce biosolids, would converting to biochar be feasible, and how?
Absolutely. So there's an example here in Medford, Oregon, near where I live, where there's a biomass power plant. And they take all the woody debris waste, from the parks, the green waste, sawmills, and they make power out of it in their furnace. And what they do is they grind it up in a tub grinder. So it's all ground up wood. It gets going into this furnace. So it's incinerated, but they make power out of it, which is good. And so it gets rid of that waste. You get power. And then normally these power plants always end up with this ash that's 40% carbon, because the little bits of wood, ground up wood kind of flow through that furnace really fast. So you get this, what comes out of the furnace has a lot of particulate matter in it, ash, and little bits of char. And there's a cyclone filter that swirls that around and it drops out. So that's how they clean the air before, so they don't pollute the air. And they just started screening the ash out of it, and they make this amazing biochar. So that, to me, is like the perfect example of how you should make biochar commercially. And then there are a number of places now that are making biochar from sewage sludge. So that's another organic material that's hard to get rid of. And it's destroying, there's a big issue right now with sewage sludge and PFAS, polyfluoral, PFAS, right? It's a persistent organic pollutant. Yeah. And it's in flame retardants and a bunch of other products, and it's accumulating in our environment right now, and it's really toxic. So and it ends up in sewage sludge, and so the process of making biochar destroys that. So that's a good thing.
So how do they do it out of that? Like, are you throwing that into a kiln?
No, there are so many different ways to make biochar. There's, like Leighton, you were talking about the gasifier you had. They're usually using some kind of gasifier or a rotary kiln. So the material goes through a kind of closed environment where the air is controlled. And so there's just enough air to burn away part of the stuff and leave behind the black, the ash, and the char. And then that comes out the other end. So it's a continuous process. And sewage sludge is actually nice to process because it's a uniform granular thing. So it flows through a process like that pretty well. Whereas other things like wood chips can be a little more difficult to process because they're not as uniform. And you can have issues with moisture content, etc., bridging, all this mechanical engineering stuff of moving material flows,
Yeah. Well, I know I watched a lot of stuff several years ago on gasifiers and, all this stuff on biochar. I can't remember the YouTube channel. It was on Mother Earth or something like that. But yeah, it's quite the process.
Mm-hmm. And if people want to take my course at Regenerative Living Online, I have one session that's just on all the different ways that biochar is made. So from ways you can do it yourself with a little tin can, a little tin can stove, all the way up to the big giant industrial processes. So I explain all that if you're curious about all of that.
Now, can they get that through your website? Because you just named a different website.
There's a link in wilsonbiochar.com.
Okay.
To the course.
Okay, and then is that in the shop or under resources?
I think it's on the front page. I'm about to redo my website. So is it home? If you scroll down a little bit, I hope I have a link there. That's it. Practical Biochar course.
Okay, there we go, guys. So if you guys want to check that out.
And you know what? I think it's a really good course. Some people have bought the course for homeschooling because it's really very appropriate for high school age kids. And so you can learn with your child if you're doing any homeschooling or any supplemental education with kids.
Cool. I'll have to suggest it to the moms that I know that are doing homeschooling. We have a big homeschooling in Alberta, so.
And it really covers, a lot of different aspects of biochar, including history. The first chapter of my book is also the history of biochar, which to me is totally fascinating. All the different cultures throughout history that have used it. And then, chemistry and soil and biology, it covers a lot of different educational fields.
And let's face it, kids love to play with fire.
They do. They do. Yeah. Everybody does.
right?
I won't go into some of the things I did as a kid because I got beat a few times for some of the
come on,
stupid things
tell
that
us.
I did.
We want to hear.
Oh, taking shotgun shells apart and lighting the gunpowder off, things like that. Stupid things kids do.
Ken, did you ever make a tennis ball cannon?
No, I didn't make the cannon, but we did other things. But no, I'm not going to go in because my wife will come down and start beating me for some of the things that I've never told her about. Okay.
I think the worst thing that we ever did was we built a 2-tiered tennis ball cannon, and you squeeze lighter fluid in the bottom, you pack the tennis ball down, and then you touch off a flame, and it just goes flying, right? Well, then we got the crazy idea of putting a slit in the tennis ball and filling it with gas. And we'd shoot it on a road, and it would bounce, and there'd be flames all the way down the road every time it landed. We laughed. We thought that was the greatest thing. And then we shot it at a hill, so it eventually went up, and then it rolled back down. And my buddy, like an idiot, jumped on it. It was still lit. The flames went up inside of his pants. And he's running around, free. We're rolling on him, jumping on him. We rolled him into the stream that was nearby to try to put him out. We all got whooping. All of us were burnt, smelled of smoke. And
you deserved it.
all his legs hair burned off. Oh my God. It was great at the time until our parents, got a hold of us. But
yeah,
we did stupid shit with flames.
Well, we took a pickup truck and a bale of straw, doused it with gasoline, tied it to the back of a pickup truck, and lit it up, and went up and down the main street of the town I lived in. And we didn't actually get caught. We should have got caught, but we got away through the fields in the 4x4, right? Stupid things, Country boys having too much fun.
Boys will be boys.
Yeah.
Don't try that. Don't try that in fire season, please.
Oh, no. Perpetual said, isn't it the air off the end in the chicken manure?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier, is that when you put biochar in manure, you need to deal with the pH. So biochar, it does actually absorb the nitrogen from the chicken manure, so you don't lose it. But you need to make sure your biochar is not too alkaline, because it's kind of fighting. The alkalinity encourages volatilization, but the biochar surfaces encourage the conversion to nitrate, and where it's stabilized. So the biochar is good, but you need to use some kind of acidifier, whether that's wood vinegar, citric acid, lactobacillus,
or just regular calcium. You can buy cheap forms of dolrite, calcimite. That'll equal it out as well. And again, if you smell it, you're losing it. Yeah. That's the volatilization. So if it smells bad, you're losing the good stuff.
And my wife is already, telling me in the chat that I'm in trouble. Okay. When it's too late. I'm looking. There's no frying pan coming so far, so I'm safe so far. So Perpetual again. So on your ring, I see it's a double wall. So what becomes char? The pile in the center, or heated but not fired wood in double wall?
Yeah, I understand what the question is. So why is there a double wall? And there's a couple reasons for that. One is it helps hold in more heat, so the process is more efficient. It goes a little faster. And then the other one is there's a gap at the bottom. Can't really see in this picture, but there's air flowing up through that. So the air flowing up through that is preheated, and that also helps burn the smoke, so it's cleaner. And then the third reason for it is to protect you, because there's a lot of heat in that can there, and you're loading it, you're carrying sticks and you're throwing it in there, and you can get pretty hot. So the outside of that, if it didn't have the second ring, it would be about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, 600 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit that you'd be exposed to radiant heat. With the outer wall, it's about 300. So it's a lot nicer to work around. So it protects the worker, holds heat in the kiln to make it more efficient, and preheats the air that's coming in up the sides and down to the top to burn the smoke more.
And if you guys look up smokeless grills or outside fire pits, you'll see what the process is and why it works. But yeah, it's amazing how easy it burns that excess smoke off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's see here. Does Kelpie have a solution? Oh, did I read that one already?
Hmm?
Oh, I didn't read it. No. Does Kelpie have a solution for urban dwellers? What we can make bokashi easily, but buying biochar for others can be pretty expensive.
Yeah. So, I think we talked earlier about a lot of cities are now allowing biochar production within the city limits, or at least some. And that if you just have a kettle grill, by urban, if you have any kind of backyard where you could have a barbecue grill, like a kettle grill, you could make biochar on that. You could go to the grocery store and buy bundles of kindling. They sell for camping or your fireplace. And so it's already chopped up the right size. And if you have an old kettle grill, you close the vent on the bottom because you don't want air to come up from the bottom. You'll burn more of it to ash. And you just stack up your wood in there. You light it, let it burn down till it's that glowing coal stage. And then you can add more if you want until you fill the whole thing with glowing coals. And then you just put the garden hose on it and put it out with water. And you can make, a nice 5-gallon bucket of biochar that way. And, and you can take a minute and cook a few hot dogs on it before you put it out if you want.
And is that what you call your glowing coal stage?
Yeah, that's getting to the stage. Yeah.
Okay.
So you put it out when the flames are all pretty much completely gone. And if you've ever camped, been at a campground where there's a fire ring, you'll see that. You'll see how that works.
I know I use 45-gallon drums to burn excess on my property. And I get that because I just keep filling it up for like 2 or 3 hours. I have 3 barrels that I do, and I get that, I make biochar that way. And I never even thought I was making biochar. I was just throwing it out into the bush. So my bush is looking pretty good most days.
Absolutely.
Now this one, can biochar kill jumping worms?
I've heard about those. We don't have them here in the West that I know of.
Not yet. They're as far west as Michigan or Montana now.
Oh no, I don't want them.
So what I'd recommend is diatomaceous earth, or also glass shards. Like you could buy like decorative glass shards. that will keep them at bay. Because they'll eat the top organic layer in the soil horizons. They decimate it. They turn into Rice Krispies. The other way is electrocution. I'm not a big fan of torturing things, but I had a good friend who's a active gardener. She had amazing veggies every year, and they decimated her raised beds, and she practically called me in tears there. Well, you told me about this, and I didn't believe you.
Plants? Do they eat the plants, or do they just eat
No, they destroy the soil profile.
Well, I don't know because I have not dealt with it, but if they eat the biochar, they're not going to mineralize it into CO2. It's just going to pass through them.
We need to kill them. That's the problem. And so that's why I recommend shards of glass or
diatomaceous earth.
But what she ended up doing was electrifying and taking an anode and a cathode, connecting it to a car battery. Just after it rained, hit it, and they all came to the surface. She scooped them up and got rid of them.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're really bad.
I like what Jeff said here, cattle prod for worms.
Yeah, literally.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that do that just to bring the worms up to the surface for fishing.
Yeah,
but I've never heard of them. But then you're electrocuting them. You're not killing them outright. You still have to go out and collect them.
Yeah. They'll all come right to the surface. Again, it has to be wet soil because otherwise your charge doesn't go very far. But and the other thing is, we talked about this. Was my great uncle, who was a full blown Indian, showed me the fish stick. You make little notches on the stick, and then you rub the stick up and down.
And vibrate it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they come up that way, but they don't come up in masses.
Biochar might help with that because it does conduct electricity to some extent.
Yeah, friction, right?
Yeah. Well, the biochar, does have a lot of availability to hold the. I'm looking for the term. It's not electricity, but the ionized particles.
Electrons and protons.
It's got redox poise. But it holds moisture. So if you need wet soil for the electrical conductivity, then wet biochar might help make it more effective.
Okay. Now I was watching a gentleman on YouTube. He's doing some stuff in Texas trying to revitalize the desert. And he was in his camp trailers. He's saving all his urine, and he's just a 45-gallon plastic barrel, loading it with biochar and pouring in the urine. Does that work really well, or how does that go with making biochar, like adding the biology into it?
Well, I make biochar urinals. In fact, I'm working on a whole little course for biochar and disaster preparedness, because we're always conscious of, if we're going to get evacuated from a wildfire, or there's an earthquake, or the power's out. Like, what do you do if the power goes out and you're on a well? You have no water. You can't flush your toilet, right?
My well pump burnt out, so I know exactly what that's all about.
So, you can get these buckets. It's called a luggable loo. I think you can get them on Amazon. We can get them at our local hardware store. It's just a 5-gallon bucket with a nice toilet seat on it that snaps on with a lid. And so I have 2 of those, one's for poo and one's for pee. And I just for the urinal, and the poo is more of involved. But for the urinal, you just fill it with charcoal, biochar, and then I put a little bokashi on top to acidify it a bit and get some biology in there. And I just use it until it's full, and then I can put it right in the garden. And there's really no odor. And it's a very strong fertilizer, so you use it sparingly. But that's how I like to do it, is just start with a biochar full bucket and just fill it until it's completely saturated, and maybe let it sit for a day or 2, and then just use it right in the garden as a fertilizer. Or you can put it in the compost pile and compost it first. It'll make your compost pile really, really go.
Yeah,
so
I think that was probably.
There was one more question. There was one more question. One of the earlier guests asked about bokashi. Kelpie, do you make your own or you purchase it?
I make it. I don't know if have you ever had Guatemala Villa on here?
Yep, we've had Guatemala Villa on
here.
Yeah,
I thought so. Yeah. So I learned from him that you can just take the EM1 culture and rebrew it. It's super easy. If you've ever made kombucha, it's similar in a way to make the culture. And so you just start with like a liter of it, and a 5-gallon bucket, and it's always 20-1. So you have a liter or a quart of the EM1 inoculant, the same amount of molasses as food, and then 20 times that, so 20 quarts or 20 liters of water. You mix it, put it in a bucket, and you let it just sit for 2 weeks. you measure the pH with a pH strip. It needs to be 3.5, and it's good. And then I bottle that up in old, soda bottles or whatever, and that lasts me for a whole year. And I use that then to make my bokashi. And to make bokashi, because I use a lot of it, I bought a kind of small, sort of light duty cement mixer, which I never use for cement. It's just for mixing soil and bokashi. But I mean, you can do it with a shovel and a wheelbarrow too, but I really like the cement mixer. It takes a lot of the work out of it. And so then I go to the feed store, I buy whatever's cheap. So it could be wheat bran, it could be rice bran, it could be shredded beet, some kind of thing that is fed to animals that has some food value in it, but also a good amount of carbon. And I'll put like 40 or 50 pounds of that in my cement mixer. And then I'll add, in that case, you don't really need a whole lot of the culture. You just need about a cup of the culture and about a cup of molasses to 40 pounds of wheat bran. And I throw that all in the mixer. I add enough water to just barely moisten it and just mix it. And then you pack it in buckets. So that'll make about 2 buckets, 5-gallon buckets and a little more. You just pack it in there like I stomp on it, get it really tight, and then put an airtight lid on it. I like those screw-on lids. And let it sit for 2 weeks. And then you've got wet bokashi, which you can use right in soil. I like to dry it because it stores longer. And then I just keep, buckets of it around for everything, for dealing with my urinals, for dealing with, for soil. It's just really useful for a lot of things.
There's the answer to that, Perpetual.
Yeah,
exactly. You need to buy your first quart, and there's a company called Terraganics that sells it. They got bought out. They used to sell you a whole liter for about $35. Now they sell you like a pint.
And they don't actually sell EM1 anymore. We actually had the owner of Terraganics on a couple of weeks ago. They're not selling EM1 anymore. They have a product they've come out with themselves, which is basically the same thing. They just can't say it's the same thing.
Yeah. And so, that's the thing. You don't need to have EM1. Well, to me, the main ingredients of it are yeast and lactobacillus. And you can make IMOs, that do a similar thing. So indigenous microorganisms, you can make your own culture. You could start with some silage inoculant. You could start with some yogurt. You could just experiment. I think you could take anything that combines yeast and lactobacillus, because the thing is, you're with EM1 and bokashi, you're not trying to replace the microbes in the soil. You're just trying to kickstart a good, healthy microbial community. And the thing about lactobacillus is that it does thrive in a less aerobic environment. So like deeper down in your soil where there's less air, if you put something like a lactobacillus in there, it doesn't need, it's facultative. It could be either anaerobic or aerobic. And so if you have a population of that kind of bacteria down there, it's not the putrefying bacteria that makes the plant roots dissolve, right?
Yeah.
It actually feeds the plants. So you're just kind of changing you get them on the good path. When you talk about microbes that decompose, you've got the fermentative ones, and then you've got the putrefying ones that make hydrogen sulfide and nasty, smelly chemicals. So you want to get them on the good path of degradation, not the bad path. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, I'm going to bring up this website. It's the Winogradsky column.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's the effective microorganisms are the one that live in the middle. I can't bring it up any larger right now. Yeah. But they can go aerobic or anaerobic. They move up and down in that column and transport the different nutrients from the lower level of biology up to the higher level of biology into your plants. So that's the really the effect of microorganisms.
Yep, they're facultative, and
Yeah.
I can't believe I made it this long, but it's done. That's razor blades. But
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you, Kelpie, for coming on again and sharing all the hard work that you've done. And it was fun just, having some casual conversations about today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And Ken, as always, thank you so much for all the work that you do behind the scenes to make this happen every week. And big cheers.
I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, it's a medication reaction. I'm on high blood pressure medicine. Oh my God. I hate pharmaceuticals. I just hate them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we got to suck it up until we get other alternatives to dealing with it. In the meantime, thank you again for coming on today. I'm going to bounce before I call off. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
So we did have one more question, Kelpie. And I'm not sure. I think you probably should be able to answer this one. Clay holds the nutrients as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so clay and biochar both have cation exchange capacity, or CEC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's partly because clay has a lot of surfaces, and it's got the kind of electrical charge that holds cations, which are positively charged ions. And so does biochar. So if you mix biochar and clay, then you really got something.
Yes. Yeah. And it helps to break up that clay into usable particles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's look at this one. We had another question come in. How much is Kelpie Wilson's chorus, and how long is it?
Yeah. So it's $299, and it's 9 sessions. And each session is about an hour-long lecture. And then it's, questions. We had a lot of questions. We had some exercises and questions. So each session is about 2 hours. But what I really like about how the way they put this course together is there were like chapters within the hour-long presentation. And so the recordings are broken up into these like 10, 15-minute chapters. So you can dip into a particular topic anywhere throughout the 8-session or the 9-session course and just learn that little bit. You don't have to like sit through, 9 sessions in a row. So
say I bought it, Kelpie, and it took me a year to actually go through it. Is that feasible, or is there a time?
Yeah, you have access to it for a full year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. If it takes you a year to get through it, if you're a slow learner, like, some people, I won't say anything, but you have access for a year. And
then, if you get the book, that's really the textbook, for the course. So if you get the book, then you have that information. It kind of walk you through all the information in the book. So you have the book as a record of everything. Oh, that's fantastic. So other than that, Kelpie, I think we'll end it a little bit early today since Leighton is having his issues. I want to thank you so much for coming back on and sharing updates with us today. And guys, don't forget that, you can get the Ring of Fire on Kelpie's website if you want to have that kind of volume. Do you sell any other styles of that, or smaller units, or? Well, I have plans available for the bin style kiln, and that's on my website too. You can download those plans and you can take them to a local welder. It's pretty simple to build. But you can also just do you have an old wheelbarrow bucket, any kind of old metal container. It's not that important. You can get those. So my kilns are now being manufactured by Tartar USA. So the link goes to their site, and they have this little fire ring that's 3 feet across. It's just like maybe a foot tall. It's a backyard fire ring, super simple. You could order one of those and make biochar in it, just any kind of little container. I know, I've made it in my fireplace. Yes, yeah. Wood stove, you can make it in a wood stove. So
if you guys are searching for different ways, you know, you can dig a hole in the ground, you can do your fireplace, you can do retorts. There's so many different ways to make
I'll just say
biochar.
one thing about digging a hole in the ground: do not dig a deep pit.
Okay.
That scares the heck out of me. What if you were to trip over a rake and fall into it?
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
build a berm, right? Build a berm of soil so it's above the ground, or make something with bricks, or you know, but
Yeah.
don't dig a big pit, please.
And the other thing, guys, if you're doing that, make sure that there is no roots that attach to that. Dig it out, pull it back in, do whatever you have to do. But if you've never heard of a root fire, it can burn for literally years underground and come back up. So be
Yeah.
very, very mindful of that.
Be fire safe.
Yes. Or as Rick says here, or a gas line.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And start small. You know, start small. Do
Yeah.
your own little experiments in a tin can or something, and see how it goes.
Well, I like the outdoor barbecue idea as well.
Yeah, the kettle
To
grill.
close that vent.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, guys, just to let you know, next week with Leighton, we have an IPM specialist. He's been on before, Claude Roberts from Anatis Bioprotection here in Canada. They do sell in the States as well, so you're going to want to check that out if you're having IPM or integrated pest management. If you don't know what IPM is, he's on with Leighton this coming week, or next Monday.
There you go.
Kelpie, thank you so much. Chat, thank you so much. We had a gentleman on from Israel. Thank you. We love to see people from all over the world coming on and learning and growing and understanding what we're trying to get across to people. If you have a chance, join in the YouTube, hit the join button, become a defender of the biology, help to support our channel. It really means a lot to us as well. But thank you so much, everybody. We love you all. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you on Wednesday with myself and Andy Lopez.
Nice.